Here's what I want you to do. I want you to clap.
In any kind of rhythmic way or just general
applause? Just one
applause?
big clap in front of your microphone.
Okay.
There we go. See, that helps me sync up the audio between the video and what we're recording here. So anyway, that'll be a fun one for the outtakes and such. So.
I thought you meant like a round of applause.
Like we were going to have like a studio audience but of one. That would be sad.
It's the saddest studio audience there ever was.
That would basically be like that. I think it was a Family Guy bit where they were filming like a live studio audience and they cut to the audience and it was like a single ostrich that was just like, ha ha.
I don't remember that.
I don't know. I'm just half remember that thing on TV that was real funny? Let's just talk about that. Let's just go full.
Isn't that kind of what we do though? We just talk about like that thing that we saw or that thing that we read.
Yeah, but we're not just gonna go full like the Chris Farley show. We're gonna be like, remember just that?
Describing a scene.
That was awesome. So we're gonna try to be a little bit more along I don't know. Analytical. Or we can just talk about how awesome it was, considering how bad I felt when I talked about how much I hated Ghostbusters. So whatever.
Hey, listen, you're allowed to like what you like and dislike
and hate what you hate.
Dislike.
That makes sense.
You're not going to like everything unless you're me. I feel like whatever we talk about during this podcast, I'm just like, yeah, I liked it. It was great.
You're going to be like Marge, like, I just think it's neat.
Right. Yeah. I'm like everyone's cheerleader, you know? I'm like, yeah, good try, buddy.
Which
good job.
The flip side of that is not going to make me look good when I'm just like, you know, it's just, it wasn't, I don't think it had enough depth to it, you know? Anyway, let's probably do like an actual intro. Okay. We haven't recorded this in like a month, so I'm going to be even worse at it than normal.
Okay.
But my name is Jeremy.
I'm Yana.
And we are joined at the Unhip, a podcast that's, you've already sort of gotten a good idea of what it is. We just talked about it. We review things and talk about general things critically. Our previous episode, we talked about a book. And this episode...
Was that the last?
That was the last episode we recorded, was the hike.
When we talked about the hike, that was the last episode
That's
we
what
recorded?
I said. We haven't recorded in like a month.
Oh, that's a bummer. Yeah, we haven't.
Well, I've been fiddling around with trying to get a new setup recorded to make the video component easier, so it's not, I don't have to take a week to edit it, but it was not working. It turns out trying to get like multiple cameras hooked up and multiple microphones hooked up to a single computer, if it isn't like a specific computer or I don't know, probably got to get some sort of deck for recording. It's a little hard. Like I've been able to do like streams and things like that, but two cameras and two microphones is like kind of a heavy lift for a computer apparently.
This is why the pros have producers. Why they have people like sitting in a little booth and doing the things.
Like Megan Gaines on the Always Sunny podcast.
Talk. Yep. Or Steven on My Favorite Murder.
I'm not familiar with Steven.
Yeah, they're always talking to Steven.
Well, all I know is if we had a producer, you probably wouldn't see my eyes occasionally glancing downward at the recording.
Yeah.
I'm managing it while we're doing our conversation.
Look at me the whole time.
Live in the moment. I'm sorry that I don't always look at you.
Bask in my glory.
Sometimes I have to look at the waveform and make sure that it's actually picking up our voices.
That's okay. You look at me plenty. In our day-to-day lives.
Yes, I do.
You can't escape me. I'm just right there constantly.
Well, that was the plan. That was the goal.
That was the intent when you married me.
Consensual stalking. I'm allowed to just stare at you.
She's always going to be there.
Follow you around the house like a puppy dog. So even though we now have an actual puppy dog who follows you around the house.
Oh my God.
She's going to be clawing at that door.
Yes, she is.
But anyway, we're going to have to just muscle through, you know, let the baby cry, etc. And we're going to be talking today about what?
You've got something on your eyebrow. Other eyebrow. Okay, you got it.
Something on my eye. What the fuck?
It looked like one of those big grains of salt that you have on big pretzels.
Like Salt Bae assaulted me or something, and
I'm sorry. It was going to bother me the entire time we're talking.
And when I went back to edit the video, I'd have been like, why the fuck didn't you tell me I had something on my eyebrow? But like, you have something on your eyebrow. It's just really funny.
Yeah,
like, what the fuck was I up to?
Not one you usually hear.
Anyway, today we're talking about a movie that I foisted upon you. that you had never heard of, and I had only heard of very recently, called Freaked from 1993, co-directed by, oh my God, I'm terrible at hosting.
Alex Winter. You
Alex
said
Winter,
is the main guy, right?
Yeah, Alex Winter, starring and co-directed by Alex Winter, and
he was the co-director. I thought he was the solitary.
There
director.
was 2 directors credited.
Who was the other director?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I just watched this movie earlier today, but I don't remember because the credits were probably the least memorable aspect of the movie. I'm very curious to get your input on this. So this movie, I had never heard of it up until like maybe a few months ago, and I was like, that looks really weird. And then like just the other day, people on Twitter were talking about it. There's a guy who does like creepy, like horror art, who's pretty famous online, named Trevor Henderson. He goes by the handle Slimy Swamp Ghost, and he actually created the creature known as Siren Head, which is like kind of a popular like online cryptid, kind of a creepypasta-esque figure. He's a cool guy.
Siren Head?
Yeah.
Does the creature like lure sailors to their death?
No, like he literally is like, he's like a kaiju that has like 2 sirens where a head would be. And
what's a kaiju?
A kaiju is like an oversized monster like Godzilla or something.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we've gotten off.
No, that's fine.
Topic.
No,
okay.
it's good.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You do a good job of like playing the role of the listener, where you're like, so to delve into that. What is explain this extremely niche online ass bullshit that only you know about because I read books instead of Twitter.
Well, okay. Anyone who's ever worked as a therapist or has ever been to therapy will know this saying. Tell me more about that. Talk about that a little bit more.
I knew about that.
I love that saying.
I knew about that from watching Frasier. So there you go. He was listening. All right.
That's right.
So this guy was talking to someone about this movie and talking about how awesome it was, and I was like, okay, the screen caps of it looked very weird. So I found out that it's like, in order to find it on DVD or Blu-ray, you have to like track it down on eBay for like $40 or $50.
I'm real glad we didn't pay that for this movie.
Okay, well, that's a nice little sneak preview of your opinion on it. But so I think because nobody really like the rights holders or whatever don't really care, this movie is on YouTube in its entirety in like full HD. So we watched that version of it, and it looked great, like in terms of like quality.
Oh yeah.
Like usually when you find a movie for free on YouTube that's like an old movie that's like out of print, it looks like absolute ass. It's like 240p, like a low frame rate. When you
told me that we were going to be watching the whole thing on YouTube, I became very nervous.
Oh god.
But it looked fine. It looked
like
good.
Usually it's like cropped or edited somehow, and it is running at a super low resolution.
Yeah.
But it actually looked great. It was HD. And so let's dive in. Well, what?
Tell the people what this movie is about. Give a brief synopsis.
So it is I would say like a satire comedy about a group of people who stumble upon like a weird freak show place in South America that is like tended to by a guy who like lures people in and turns them into freaks. But it's very like, I would say the comedy, like the humor in it is a little bit like stylistically, it's like all over the place. Like sometimes it's like quips, but other times it's like airplane-esque like sight gags or something, or like weird cameos that by today's standards you're like, like at one point you turned to me and you were like, I think that's a famous guy, but I don't know who it is. Like the movie like pointedly was like, I don't know, I think it was, I think I know, like if you put a gun to my head I might remember who that guy's name is, but I don't know. There was like, it's all over the place in terms of what kind of jokes were at it, but it's constantly throwing jokes at you, and it's very weird. It's very like over the top in terms of its like tone. It's like very high energy, which can be a little grating like when you're watching it, but it's also like, I don't know, it's trying very hard to entertain throughout. And I thought it was like, I don't know, I thought it sort of like put the work in. Like I feel like the people who made it were really trying to like just inject a lot of entertainment value. So let's dive right into what we thought of it, or maybe just go through the movie scene by scene and just talk about what happened.
I would struggle to describe exactly what happened because it was so bonkers and insane. First of all, the opening credits. Okay.
This movie feels very 1993.
Yes. It is unmistakably from the 90s, like extremely, which is not a bad thing.
Right.
It's not.
The opening credits definitely feel like a music video you would stumble upon in like the early 90s as a kid and be like, what the fuck is this?
So I cannot stand it when movies have like a boring opening credits, like when it's just words on a screen and nothing else is happening.
Yeah.
Do something else.
Yeah, you could just play that over.
There can be something else happening.
Yeah.
I hate it when it's just like, here's the people who made it for the first 5 minutes.
George Lucas deliberately had to pay like fines because he refused to put opening credits on the Star Wars movies.
So this went the opposite way. There was so much happening.
It's like a bunch of weird stop motion gags. In the beginning.
And it's constantly moving. There's some kind of very upbeat rock song playing. It very much looks like a 90s music video. Did you ever see the video for Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer?
No.
Okay.
You know me,
I'm very good video.
I have very low.
It's a good video. So it's just like his head throughout the entire video. And all kinds of crazy stop motion shit is happening around it.
Wow.
So imagine the opening credits that we saw today, but a little slower. And the speed with which it was going, I was fearful for myself. Like,
what do you mean?
If I had a seizure disorder, surely it would have triggered one.
This movie definitely should come with one of those, like, if it was made now, they definitely would have, like, photosensitive people.
Yeah.
Like, even the word freaked in the opening credits was, like, jittery.
Right. That being said, it was perfect opening credits for what this movie was.
Yeah.
It leads you right in. It was a very good fit for the movie in general.
So, take us through the movie itself and your reaction to it.
I didn't hate it. I really didn't. I thought it was funny. The way that you describe its humor is exactly right. It's like all over the place, but a lot of the visual gags are very funny. Toward the end, I was definitely ready for it to be done. I was like, okay. And it was very short.
The wonderful thing about this movie is it's like 75 minutes long.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect length for a movie like this.
Yeah. All the freaks are very kind of funny looking, strange looking, and whatever.
They have like a funny hook or gimmick to them.
Yeah. Alex Winter. Oh, his character was hard to watch.
Well, he was doing something. So this movie feels
purposely obnoxious.
The whole movie feels like a cartoon that someone was like, well, let's shoot this live action. Let's give it. Like somebody wrote a script for a Beavis and Butthead, a type of movie aimed at the Beavis and Butthead crowd. And they were like, well, maybe we can film this and just get a bunch of crazy makeup artists. And I will say that about this, the effects work, the makeup work, all that stuff was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like some no budget movie.
Worm guy looked like a worm. Big old giant worm.
Yeah.
Looked great.
Some of it I legitimately Alex Winter. So Alex Winter plays a former child star who's brought in to be the face of an evil company that's literally selling toxic waste or something. And he goes to South America to pitch for it or whatever. And he's very obnoxious. First of all, it's Alex Winter with black hair, which was already throwing me off a little bit.
Yeah.
And he's doing I'm so used to Bill and Ted version of Alex Winter that a version of him or Lost Boys in which he's also a very Californian character. And in this, he's not doing any kind of surfer accent. He's doing some kind of weird, I don't even know what you call it, but it's it's very animated. It's very sneery. And he's talking with a really weird, trying to do an Elvis thing or something. I'm not really sure, but he's very obnoxious. So when he somehow ropes a protester against his company because she's a cute girl to come with him on the trip, and they end up visiting a sideshow.
Was she a cute girl? I mean, physically, yeah, but also just obnoxious. Everyone in this movie is obnoxious.
I'm talking about what she looked like.
Everybody is obnoxious.
Yeah, you got to grade everyone in this movie on a curve.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was really funny that, like, I don't even know what the point of this was exactly, but, like, she and his sidekick, the guy from Blossom, like, for 95...
Not Joey Lawrence, the other brother.
Michael Stoyanov, I think his name is. Like for 90% of the movie, like shortly after they get caught by this guy played by Randy Quaid, they get like
perfect casting.
Yeah, perfect casting. They get fused into like one body, so they have like a singular pair of legs and torso, and then like two heads, and they're basically just doing Three Stooges shit for the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
they're just like nagging at each other and smacking each other around, which is pretty funny. And that's the thing. That's yet another like pillar of different comedy styles. There's like weird slapstick like that. And like there's also like weird pop culture references that some of which have endured and some of which are just like I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. But the one part where they're fighting over a deodorant stick. They're fighting over a secret deodorant stick, and his arm is pulling on it, and her arm is pulling on it, and he's like, "It's strong enough for a man." And she's like, "But it's made for a woman." That's pretty funny for like a joined together like man and woman. But like the logic of like the woman protesting against the evil company was suddenly like, ooh, let's go look at freaks. I'm like really interested. Like freaks are like a natural part of life, and we should go like this. Yeah. That was such a weird, like, I think that was supposed to be like an inversion of like the usual thing where the girl is like, no, I don't want to go here.
She's like always the scared one.
Yeah, I don't know. Usually it's the guy who's like, no, babe, let's go check it out. And she's like, I don't want to. I'm scared. And in this case, she was like, no, all of nature is beautiful. And like a weird little butterfly like alights on her finger, and she accidentally like eats it or something. There's so many weird I mean, I don't know why I'm just not thinking of this, but I feel like there was a lot of drugs involved in the making of this movie. But like,
you think?
There's just so many like that.
I had that thought 2 minutes into this movie was that like I feel like I am not stoned enough to fully appreciate this.
Oh, I'm kind of glad.
If I had a couple of hits and it was like, and I was feeling good, I feel like I would have maybe liked it a little more.
I don't think this is a good movie to watch if you're stoned. I feel like you would just be like, oh, I don't like this.
But you have to be like fun stoned.
I guess.
Not like paranoid, weirded out stoned.
I guess that's why I don't do that, because it's like, you know, that was pretty much my experience with it, was weirded out. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, or maybe if you're drunk watching it, like I feel like drinking and watching this with like a room full of your friends would probably be pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of The Room-esque in that way, I guess, but like it's deliberately funny, and a lot of the like there's a fair number of like jokes that fall flat, and there was like some awkward like silences in the room while we were just sitting there quietly watching it. But we laughed out loud a lot.
Oh yeah.
This movie. And like that's a testament to a funny movie. Yeah. Like it takes a lot for me to like laugh a lot throughout a comedy movie, I feel like. And a lot of it was just like the basis of comedy, which is just surprise. Like they're just taking these wild swings at like weird visual gags, and like there's the sequence where the guy. They're basically these people have all been turned into freaks by this guy who takes this toxic sludge, puts it through a machine, and creates like a magical paste that he has like programmed to mutate them in a specific way. There's shots of his computer where he designs he designs what the freaks are gonna look like, and it's really funny. Like the interface is really funny. Like the keys are misspelled on the keyboard and shit. So he keeps them all locked inside this Hermione Granger ass like outhouse that looks like
it's like tiny on the outside and really huge on the inside.
It's like a huge, I would call it like a barn / dormitory like building, where it looks like a barn it looks like a shit house on the outside. It looks like a barn on the inside, but there's little like dorms for where they're all living, and they're all locked inside of it. And there's lots of like weird just gags of them like dealing with each other, and some of them are just, some of the designs are like, I think my favorite character was the sock head guy. It's literally just like a human body, but there's a hand with a sock on it coming out where the head would be, and it's voiced by Bobcat Goldthwait,
which is a surprise.
Yeah,
he doesn't talk for a while.
Just hearing his voice, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't talk for a while, and then you get to a point in the movie where, like, all the other freaks, the main characters meet all the other freaks, and they, like, tell them their story, their origins of, like, how they came upon this freak show and were turned. And it pans to the sockhead guy, and so you have zero context for, like, if this thing even talks or whatever, and all of a sudden it's just Bobcat Goldthwait's voice.
Just hearing his voice was a punchline.
Yeah.
And especially, like, if you're our age where you, like, we're just old enough to remember, like, the era when Bobcat Goldthwait was in movies. Like, I guarantee you say that name to our kids, they're going to be like, we have no idea who you're talking about. He's now, like, a movie director. He's, like, directed some, like, acclaimed comedies and stuff. But, like, you know, he was a staple of, like, the Police Academy movies. I think he was, like, the original Charlie Day, where he was, like, first of all, young. They both look a lot alike. Yeah. And he had just, like, high-pitched, like, whining, squealing voice. Like, there's just and high energy with that. It was, like, very, very similar in terms of their, like, comedic shtick. But that character was just hilarious. And it was another one of those situations where it looked really funny and cool. Like, it just, they had something rigged up where it was, like, a hand coming out of the top of this guy's torso, but he still was using his regular hands. And I don't know, a lot of it was like that, where I was like, there was some very creative, like, effects work on this movie, and a lot of it was either, like, dumb, a lot of it was either like stop motion. What are you laughing about?
I'm thinking back to where the one guy goes and, you know, knows he can smell the future.
Yeah, one character has, like, his whole head is like a nose. That almost sounds like that Always Sunny thing where they're like Dolph Lundgren has a head that's a whole nose and he can smell crime. That's like what that's taken from almost.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So you liked it. So you liked it.
I did. I don't know if I would want to watch it again. Mm-hmm. But I liked it for what it was.
I would definitely watch it again if I was like in a very specific mood.
Yeah. I wouldn't spend $30 or $40 on purchasing it. I was glad that we watched it for free.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping they don't take it down, because I feel like more people would, like, get a kick out. Especially people like me, or, like, other people that are into, like, horror comedy type stuff.
Yeah, it's not something that I would want to watch all the time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you're feeling silly.
Is there a more, like, down for what the fuck ever actor in, like, especially in the 90s than Randy Quaid? That dude was like, sure, I'll play, like, a naive Amish boy who is also 50 who becomes, like, a bowling prodigy in this Fairley Brothers movie. And sure, I'll play, like, the dumbass cousin in all these National Lampoon's movies. Yeah. And sure, I'll play this guy who turns people into freaks, who dresses like, I don't fucking, like, weird.
What was he in Independence Day? He was like a crop duster?
He was like a drunken crop duster who, like, ends up saving the world. That's right. And then he was also in, I don't know if people ever remember this, but he was also in Brokeback Mountain in, like, a very serious role.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's like their foreman, right? Yeah. He's like the guy they have to report to.
He's the guy that, like, fires them because he, like, figures out what they're doing. Yeah. Right. And he's, like, very good and serious in that role. So it's kind of a bummer that Randy Quaid, like, lost his fucking mind.
Yeah, isn't he, like, super right wing?
He's like no wing. He, like,
he's
went
just like crazy.
He, like, went way off the reservation. He released, like, a weird sex tape and, like, no thanks. And then it also talked about how there's, like, a secret. He talked about he invented something that Film Drunk called the Star Whackers, which is, like, this cabal of people that go around killing famous people and staging it like it's an accident, like what happened to David Carradine. You know what I mean?
Which one is David Carradine?
Bill from Kill Bill. He was found. Oh. He was found, like, I think it was like an autoerotic asphyxiation accident in, like, in, like, a hotel room in Thailand. Yeah, and Randy Quaid posited that was, like, a conspiracy of some sort of assassins that kill famous people and make it look like an embarrassing accident or something. Anyway, Randy Quaid's fucking crazy now, so maybe that's why he was willing to do movies like this. But there's just so much to go on in this movie.
There's a lot to unpack. So much so that, like, my brain is having a hard time focusing on any one thing.
One wonders where, like, the germination of the ideas came from with this movie, like, who came up with the concept and, like,
I feel like it was a bunch of guys And it was one of those brainstorming sessions where it was like, there's no wrong answer. Whatever you think, just shout it out.
Yeah.
And usually when you do that, then you like pare things down later. Except with this, no one pared anything down.
See, I think they actually did.
You think?
Well, the movie's only 75 minutes long.
Well, yeah.
And it's very tight in terms of like a plot. It's like they get captured by this guy. It almost reminded me of like a kid.
But there's just so much packed into that 70 minutes. It
which is why it feels like
stop.
Which is why it feels like it was work. It feels like someone's like it feels like someone's baby. Like it feels like someone was like, I love working on this. I'm going to put a lot of effort into just hammering on the jokes over and over again. Like and just like put all this energy into like the dumbest visual gags. Like, I'm sorry. There's a sequence in this movie where the main guy escapes and disguises himself as a milkman.
This was tremendous.
Yeah, it disguises himself as a milkman, and then he goes and gets like accosted by the evil guy and sits in his living room, and then he comes out and finds that all the other freaks have escaped, who have also somehow found milk guy or milkman uniforms. So there's just like, it cuts to all of them standing there in milkman uniforms that somehow fit all of their weird bodies,
and all of them are carrying the little thing of milk,
the little glass thing of milk. It makes no sense. There was one milkman like van. It was hilarious. Yana and I just died laughing.
They all start like fighting. They get into a fight. There's like this big kerfuffle, and Randy Quaid's character is watching them on his like surveillance thing or whatever, and he goes, why are there so many milkmen on one route? No wonder they're fighting.
Yeah, so like it'll do that. It'll hit you with like a visual punchline. It'll hit you with like 3 more jokes like on top of that. It's just very dense, and like it kind of you kind of miss comedies like that now, where it's like, you know, there'd be like something pretty funny that happens every like 5 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's mostly like a serious plot. Like I feel like most comedies now are sort of like Horrible Bosses, where it's like kind of very plot driven, and like all of the punchlines are like, you know, sort of like one-liners or zingers or something that the characters exchange. But this was like crazy visual gags, one-liners, like weird offhand references to pop culture that have aged in very strange ways.
It's funny that you mentioned Horrible Bosses, because I'm thinking of Jason Bateman and like his delivery. I like him in comedies, and his delivery is so dry, and that's like where, you know, the comedy comes from with him, I feel like.
Yeah.
And that's something you see a lot too. There's always like kind of the straight man who's funny in and of himself. And in this movie, like, there is none of that.
There's no
Everything is balls to the wall. Everything is like out there and crazy. And you're right. You don't see that much of that anymore.
Yeah. It's just over the top.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even pretend like it exists in the real world.
Oh, no.
Like, it opens with a parody of a talk show in America from the early 90s. And then it cuts to like a boardroom scene that's very clearly like super over the top, where like all of the board members are like cronies of the main dude, who are literally being like puppeted by like a weird mechanism where he like raises their hands for them. And then
they're like marionettes.
The main guy is a famous dude with an entourage of like ridiculous looking characters, like a sheik, and like just all kinds of crazy shit going on in the background.
I'm gonna let the dog in.
Okay, that's fine. Gonna take a quick commercial break.
Hello, Iris.
This is great audio.
I'm back.
I'm probably just
with the dog.
Probably just gonna cut all that out.
Okay.
Anyway, it's still better than, you know, having scratching at the door in the background for the entire rest of the episode. But so yeah, this movie just doesn't take place in reality. It kind of, weirdly enough, like I watched a clip of it online before we watched the movie, and it was the scene where the two get merged together and they just turn into like a big ball of clay first, and then a bunch of different characters. And watching that clip and then also watching this movie, I'm reminded of something we discussed some weeks back after we watched Dark City, and Roger Ebert's review of it, where he was like, some movies you watch and they just make you realize how many movies are just about people standing around and talking to each other. And this is one of those movies where you're like, yeah, this is definitely not one of those kind of movies. It's just constantly like flop sweating for your amusement. And that's like one of the things I really appreciated. This movie is trying to entertain the shit out of you constantly.
And as long as you know what you're getting into when you watch it.
Don't be expecting anything.
Which the movie makes it very clear within the first 30 seconds what you're going to be getting.
Yeah, the opening credits.
Right. And so as long as you're on board for that, you're going to have a good time. if you like a more kind of cerebral comedy or whatever, if you don't like that kooky kind of genre, then maybe it's not for you. But
it's a little bit lowbrow. There's like weird fart jokes in it. And stuff.
I don't know. My sense of humor is such that I could get on board with it, and I thought it was really funny.
I mean, there's one treat. One of the treats in it is there's a man who's not in it that much, but he's a half man, half dog, and Yana, I was like, Yana, do you know who that is? And she was like, I have no idea. I was like, well, he's a friend of Alex Winter. And you were like, holy shit, is that Keanu Reeves? So yeah, Keanu Reeves is in this movie. And like the height, this was like came out like in between Bill and Ted and Speed. So it's like right as he's at like it's like the year after the Bram Stoker's Dracula came out. So this was like Keanu Reeves at the height of, or not the height of his fame, because he's still super goddamn famous. But I mean, like, this was when he was famous enough to like, he could have turned this movie down easily, but he was like, no, it's just like the most Keanu Reeves thing ever for him to be like, no, my friend's making like this super weird passion project and I'll be in it. I'll sit in a makeup chair for 7 hours and look like a dog.
Can we talk about Mr. T for a second?
Oh my God.
First of all, that does not hold up.
That aspect of it?
Yes.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, there's a couple.
However,
there's a couple problematic elements. Like he plays the bearded lady, and his, as far as I can tell, his version of becoming a freak is that they just give him female genitalia.
I guess.
Because he looks exactly the same, but he like refers to himself as the bearded lady and still has the same voice and everything like that. Like literally, they all tell their origin story and they're all very brief. And his is literally Randy Quaid saying like, I think I'm going to cut your dick off.
Yeah, he's like, I think you'd be happier without a dick.
Yeah.
It's not great.
It's a little, I mean, definitely like the modern like era of of gender dynamics in politics.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit, it feels a little bit tone deaf, but it's also like, there's something about this movie that's supposed to be very body positive and identity positive. Like at the very end, they give kind of like a weird speech about like, you know, people are lovable no matter what they look like. Like there's a weird thing where they're all gathered on stage and they give some sort of like weird speech that's very positive. This whole movie reminds me of like a kids TV show or something where it's like, okay, or like something like Chicken Run or something where it's like the characters are all captured by an evil guy and they have to devise a plan to like sabotage his like doomsday device and escape. Like that's like the plot of a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
Like that very much felt like that to me. And it felt like at the end where it's like they're just like, they just hammer home the lesson of the episode.
I mean, I thought Mr. T did a great job. I thought his parts were very funny.
It's one of those things where
but I felt like an asshole for laughing at them.
Well, it was a funny, like all of the background, all of the origin story aspects were very like short and like kind of just had like a single punchline. And his was literally Randy Quaid being like, I don't think you should have a dick, which was just kind of like just shocking and funny. But like the what they were trying to say, if this movie's trying to say anything, felt kind of like when like a liberal is trying to be well-meaning but like doesn't quite know what to say and ends up just saying something offensive or patronizing. Mm-hmm. You know, it kind of has that tone to it where it's like, I think you might have okay politics, but I don't think you know how to word it correctly or say it well.
There were some parts in this movie where What?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
There were some parts in this movie where I was like starting to get bored. Some parts that I was just kind of like, okay, I'm not into this. Well, it wears
on you pretty quickly. Like, because it's going 100 miles per.
But overall,
it's cranked to 11 the entire time.
The whole time.
So that wears you out pretty quickly.
But overall, I thought it was good.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I will say another aspect of it that has not aged well, though it really made me laugh when we watched it, was the eyeball characters.
Yeah.
So like there's so I'm not very knowledgeable about Rastafarianism, but there's a big statue with Randy Quaid's head that like rotates and it's like eyes move and follow people. And at one point he like does a thing and the eyes come out of like a hatch and are carrying guns and they're like anthropomorphized eyeballs where the iris is like a little mouth that talks. It's like an amazing little visual.
Crazy.
It's just one of many amazing like animatronic puppetry jobs in this movie, but they also wear little Rastafarian hats and speak in Jamaican accents, and it's because their names are I and I, which is like a Rastafarian thing. I don't know,
I did not know. Which I had never heard.
I'm very ignorant when it comes to that kind of thing. I just know I've heard that phrase with regards to Rastafarianism, and just that was the entire reason that they made them Jamaican, is because they're an I and I, and that's why they made them Jamaican. And at one point they bust into the place where the freaks live, and one of them has like a giant, like a joint sticking out of its little like iris
weird mouth.
Yeah. And just the visual of like these little tiny like, or these little like bulbous like eyeballs with legs running after people, shooting them with Uzis, was just really funny. And at one point they like mow down the sock with Uzis, and the part where he's giving his dying words and blood comes out of his like little hand mouth. Because, you know, in movies, if you get shot and are dying, you always have to cough up blood. Right. That was amazing. That was fantastic. I laughed so hard at that. Like, this movie had just a lot of creativity jammed into it. I feel like we're kind of hammering the same critical point over and over again. But like, honestly, it's very much worth watching, and it is free on YouTube. Especially
if you miss the 90s. If you long for the 90s, I feel like this is a good movie to watch.
Like if you were like 13 or 14 in the 90s and you came across this movie on like late night cable, you would be like transfixed by it, I feel like, or like on Comedy Central. I'm really surprised this movie didn't play on Comedy Central constantly. Given we just talked about Airheads and how much we love Airheads, and it was constantly playing on Comedy Central. I'm really surprised this was not one of those movies that they just played constantly on Comedy Central.
So, honey, we've been talking about this for the last couple of days about how much the 90s are coming back. Like ridiculously so. Everything 90s is making a comeback. If you go into Target, like so many of their fashions, so many of the clothes that they have, I mean, I'm seeing it in like other stores. It's just straight out of like 1995.
It kind of reminds me of how like my senior year of high school, or like my later high school years in the early 2000s, everyone was dressing like it was the 80s.
I know. I mean, everything old is new again. Fashion is very cyclical.
But here, I want to make a very clear point here about the 90s. You and I have a lot of fond memories about the 90s.
Oh yeah.
We grew up in the 90s. We're like 90s babies or 90s kids, whatever whatever they're called. Yeah.
Only 90s kids will understand.
That's right. Fashion in the 90s was bad, and a lot of things in the 90s, fashionably or otherwise, like pop culture-wise, was not great. 90s is when like rap rock was invented. Like 90s is when like grunge came out and was good for like 5 minutes, and then a bunch of like Johnny Come Lately bands came and like ruined it.
Like it holds a special place in our heart because that's when we were young and it's nostalgic. But
I have a theory about why like the whole like not only 90s kids will remember thing is so pervasive, and why millennials in particular, like every generation has like their huge bouts of nostalgia and are just drawn to nostalgic artifacts like you know Star Wars or whatever. Gen X did it. Boomers are just cannot let go of the 50s like whatsoever. You cannot wrestle it out of their hands. But I feel like one of the reasons millennials seem particularly like we're holding on to the 90s with like a death grip is because of 9/11. I feel like we like right after the 90s ended was like a horrific thing that was unprecedented in America.
So it was like the last golden age. It was before like that loss of innocence.
It was literally like the 90s was literally like the decade between the Cold War ending and the forever war of after 9/11. Like it's literally that's the gap. The Cold War ended in 89 and then 9/11 happened in 2001, and I feel like that period, as bad as it was in a lot of ways for a lot of other reasons that people who are more politically minded than myself will probably can go on and on about, but when you're like our age and you were like a coming of age in the 90s, all you remember is like the world wasn't in quite as much turmoil. Like there wasn't the threat of nuclear winter, and there wasn't the like all my friends are going to Iraq. Like like there was like the thing happening in Kosovo at one point in the late 90s. I remember that happening, but like for the most part, if you were a kid in the 90s, it felt like looking back on it now, it felt like a weirdly innocent time because it was neither of those things.
And we lived it. What a treat.
Yeah, what a treat. With our Zubaz pants and our slap bracelets and shit. And like...
And our Tamagotchi pets.
We recently purchased Tamagotchi pets at their request, and I have no idea. Like, we were like trying to feed it and like take care of it at one point. We were just like, how is this a toy that was so popular?
I was never that into Tamagotchis when I was a kid, and it's just like extra responsibility.
Yeah, as a parent,
no thanks.
As the parents of 2 kids and a dog and a cat, we were like, this is just shit we already have to do constantly. Like,
I don't want to do it as part of a game.
I already have to keep multiple organisms from dying. And you and I can't take care of a houseplant worth shit. So like, this is not fun for us. That's probably one of the reasons I can't play like super complicated video games, because after a while I'm just like, this is just like a job and I just want to shoot at something.
I don't want homework.
Yeah. I already do plenty of work out of my house. I don't really need to do this for funsies. But yeah, I mean, we talked about this earlier, but there was a news article the other day that Jinkos are coming back. And that right there is just like, that's a good demonstration of like, come on, man, the 90s were not that good. Jinkos, come on. Jinkos coincided with like juggalo shit. Yeah, the 90s gave birth to like Insane Clown Posse, who I don't mind, and one of our kids may or may not be like getting into that. But like, God, they seem like good-natured weirdos. As long as he doesn't start doing drugs, I'm okay with it.
Okay, guess what? Adrian played me a couple of their songs because I was never like a big fan. And Adrian played me a couple of their songs on Friday. Iris, please stop. Cut it out. And I was disturbed.
Well, yeah.
The songs, and I will say this, the songs tell a story, which is interesting, but the story they tell is bone-chilling.
Bone-chilling. Wow, that's quite the claim there.
So,
well, I mean, he's 15. He's going to be doing all kind, like listening to stuff that's deliberately that's like meant to piss off parents.
Listen, whatever. Like, yeah, the kids listen to whatever.
When you're 15, like you're and you have, you know, parents like us who are pretty forgiving of a lot of like generally harmless crap. I mean, they're like first order of the day is like, how can I get on my parents' nerves or piss them off with my media consumption?
How can I shock them?
Right. How can I wear something that's going to annoy them or listen to loud music that's going to piss them off or annoy or give them a headache? Like that's just your MO when you're a teenager. Like the other day when we were driving and he played you a Childish Gambino song that was just profane as fuck, like out of the gate, which I thought was kind of funny because I don't know. I do kind of like the fact that he doesn't have any compunction about playing that stuff. Be like, yeah, this is what I'm into right now.
And I was very much like clutching my pearls. I was like, oh my God.
And it was.
I do not enjoy this.
Well, but it's like, you know, I don't know. It's whatever, you know. People our age listen to Eminem to shock our parents, like when we were that age.
Oh, no. I mean, I totally get it. And I don't care that Adrian listens to that stuff. It's like, whatever. Listen to whatever you want to listen to. But I'm just...
But like I said, I draw the line at Jenkos. He can wear all the ripped up pants or whatever he wants to.
You know what, though? Like, I remember when I was a teen, like, loving the 60s aesthetic.
Yeah.
I desperately wanted to be a hippie. I thought it was the coolest thing.
It's all cyclical like that.
Right. Yeah. So I can totally see like 15-year-olds now looking back.
I mean, what was
20, 30 years ago and being like, yeah, that looks cool.
What was one of the biggest hit shows on network television in the late 90s? That 70s show. Like, it was like all a nostalgia play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's just how it goes. And it's kind of weird seeing the fashions that like we grew up with falling into that. You know? Especially because I've always thought, even as someone who's nostalgic for the 90s, just thought that's never going to come back around because it looks like shit. Like it's bad. It is. But then like, you know, not that long ago, mullets seemed to come back into play, and that really surprised me because I was like, man, those didn't even look good at the time. I don't know if people are doing it ironically or what, but it just I try my level best, especially as like an adult man who has a collection of Legos, who sometimes wears like, you know, graphic tees of Star Wars and shit like that. I try not to. I really do not want to judge people based on the way they dress, or I'm like, I don't want to be I really don't want to be the person that's like, you're too old to dress like that, because who fucking cares? Do what makes you happy. But like, if I see someone with a mullet, there's just
it just doesn't look good.
There's like almost what feels like a survival instinct that kicks in. That's like, this person is a bad person. I don't know why.
I do not trust their decision making.
They're going to do anything that it takes to keep their achy breaky heart
oh my God.
from breaking.
Oh, I remember that song.
It's so bad.
Oh, so bad.
It was so bad. He looked terrible. Like, it was just...
Oh, that song was everywhere.
Yeah. Achy Breaky Heart by Billy
Ray Cyrus.
Who then went on to foist his fucking daughter upon the world. And, you know, well, God bless her. She's like way eclipsed his, like he was a flash in the pan and she's still around. She's been doing it for like 20 years now.
Really?
Yeah. Hannah Montana.
When did Hannah Montana
That had to be like the early 2000s.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. We're in 2022 now.
Yeah. Yeah. She's been doing it since she was a teen. Yeah, it's really weird to think that the early 2000s was 20 years ago, but it's true.
Time keeps on slipping.
No, you can't sing that. You can't sing that.
Into the future. I can't.
We don't have the rights to that song.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Steve Miller.
No,
Band.
I think we're
we're small enough. No one's going to care.
Well, we're not trying to stay small enough, but also I think if you keep it under 15 minutes, it's okay.
There you go.
Or 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Seconds.
Okay, this isn't like Meatloaf songs here.
We can play the entire song
R.I.P.
5 times over before we have to pay the... No, it's 15 seconds. Well, you singing that is just like... Yeah, that's another thing that's terrible about like the night, like, you know, that was made even more famous in the 90s by R. Kelly, who is now known to be just like a horrific monster.
Really? That song?
Yeah. He did a cover of that song for the Space Jam soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
And that's like why everyone in the 90s knew what it was, because at the time it had been like 20 years since Steve Miller Band had done it.
I never saw all of Space Jam.
But that soundtrack was like all over the radio.
I didn't really listen to it.
You don't remember I Believe I Can Fly?
I remember I Believe I Can Fly.
That was from that movie. That was like in that movie that was written for that movie. That was an R. Kelly song.
Yeah, but that didn't sample that song, did it?
No, that was a different song.
Oh, okay.
I Believe I Can Fly was an original song by R. Kelly for the Space Jam soundtrack because it was about how Michael Jordan can fly.
I Believe I Can Fly was a good song.
Yeah. And
written by a bad person.
I don't know if he wrote it, but yeah, like and
performed by a bad person.
Time Keeps on Slipping was on the same soundtrack and covered by R. Kelly, and that's why all only 90s kids will remember that was also. That's not why
I remember it. I remember it because I used to listen to classic rock stations.
I have that album. I have that same album that I used to listen to Steve Miller Band all the time, and I recently bought it again on vinyl because I'm.
How did we start talking about this?
Because the movie that we watched was very 90s.
Oh yeah,
and so that led us into. 90s. So this is going to be like a classic dual themed podcast that ties together. So the movie we watched was very 90s, and we're just reminiscing about.
Can I say something that has nothing to do with anything?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Well, because you told me to think of something else that I might want to talk about on the podcast. So...
we could work on our segues just a little bit better.
Okay.
Can I talk about something completely different? I'm just kidding, honey. Go ahead.
Anyway, a couple of podcasts ago, I was talking about a series of books that I very much enjoy about the Bergman family. Do you remember me talking about this, or did you zone out?
Yeah, it was like a family that were like the siblings were all like, there was a bunch of siblings that were all in contention with each other and stuff, and sort of something like that.
Yeah. So like each book is about
a member of the family.
One of the siblings and kind of how they get together with their whoever. So anyway, there's 3 siblings left to go. The next book
the rest of them are dead?
No, 3 more books are coming out.
It sounded like they were like killing them off systematically. Like there's 3 of them left.
Stop. No, there are 3 siblings left that are going to get their own books.
Oh, so this is like a really, really, really. This is sort of like the George R.R. Martin thing where you're just anticipating the next book in the series to come out.
Yeah, so when I started reading the series, there were already like 3 of them out, and then the 4th one came out shortly thereafter. And now I'm waiting for like the other 3. So, excuse me, the next one comes out in May, and the cover art or whatever for it just dropped, and like the synopsis just came out, and it's a gay romance.
Oh, man.
And I think
Clashing of the Worlds.
Fantastic. Because, and I was going to say this when I talked about this author originally, but I just didn't for whatever reason. But like, I've been thinking at least one of these should be like a gay romance, right? Because, I mean, just statistically speaking, you get a group of 7 people together, at least one of them is going to belong to the LGBTQ community. Like, at least.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Probably more.
Right.
So I'm really glad that the author was like, took that into account.
It's 7 siblings?
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, definitely 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. And you've been on like a gay romance book tear, so
that's
this is
right.
the perfect clashing.
So I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. You
I'm
gotta let me know how it is.
I will.
I'm probably not gonna read those books because it's not like
I know you're not.
Not like my thing, but I'm glad that you're enjoying them.
Mm-hmm. I think that was what I wanted to say. And now I'm done.
And now I'm done.
As far as books that you are interested in, I have yet to get up the gumption to read The Last Dark Tower because I'm like afraid to read it because I know that all of these characters are going to die. I can feel it in my heart. I know they're all going to die. And I can't bring myself to read the last book. You don't know
that they're all going to die.
And it's very, very thick.
I will say the last book in the Dark Tower series is a little daunting, and it probably could have gone through a few more rounds of editing and cutting down. I love the series on the whole, but it's very, very flawed in my opinion. It's just one of those things. It's kind of like when you view Star Wars as like a property where you're like, I love Star Wars, the concept and the universe, and the original movies are fantastic, but taken as a whole media empire, there's a lot of crap in there. And the Dark Tower series, it's 7 books. It's Stephen King running wild. And as much as I love Stephen King, he has a lot of weird flaws in the way that he approaches things. And these books hit all those. There's the weird racial shit. That guy is very tone deaf when it comes to race. He hates fat people with a rage that I just don't understand. And it is unrelenting. The man cannot introduce a fat character without just degrading the shit out of him in the narration.
I am currently listening to Skeleton Crew, which is a collection of short stories, and Word Processor of the Gods, which I enjoyed.
Oh, the guy talking about his wife?
But oh my God, when he talks about his wife, wow. I listened to that. I was like, holy shit, Stephen King, let's ease up just a little bit.
Well, the main character in that book in that story is not supposed to be a good person, but it just feels like, knowing Stephen King, you're like, well, he just was looking for a reason to be like, let's put a fat person in this so we can just talk about how fucking gross they are. I really don't like that about him. I love the guy for a lot of other reasons.
But the Dark Tower series, I feel like for me, reading the Dark Tower could be like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. Once you finish, you just have to start over again. Did you not know that?
I've never heard that expression before.
Yeah, well, because they're constantly painting and repainting the Golden Gate Bridge because once they finish, once they get to the end, it's time to refresh the coat of paint at the front again.
Oh, okay.
So they're just constantly doing it. I'm sorry, I keep bumping the table.
It's okay.
So, I feel like once I finish the series, I could just go right back to the beginning and start rereading it again.
You haven't read the first book in several years at this point.
Yeah. That right. And I'm taking a lot of time between each book.
Yeah, which is probably good for your mental health, considering the fact that those books can be depressing.
Yeah.
And the last one is particularly it wraps things up, so there's a lot of emotional stakes.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a very emotional read for me, and I just haven't quite gotten...
Well, I'm very much looking forward to it.
I haven't gotten myself together enough to read it.
Had you read Stephen King before you started reading the books that I had brought when we moved in together? I can't remember if you were a King reader or not. I
had not read anything by Stephen King prior to my meeting you.
That's really surprising.
You turned me on to Stephen King.
I'm proud that I've done that.
Yep.
It's always nice whenever you introduce your loved one to something that you
they
love,
really enjoy,
something that you love, and then they end up loving it. That's often not the case, and I don't think it should be the case that often. We've talked about this before off air, but the compulsion to insist that your loved one be into all the exact same shit that you're into is a false premise in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's some people that will go into a relationship with like deal breaker movies and deal breaker books or deal breaker TV shows where it's like, if they don't like, Pulp Fiction or whatever, then I can't date them. Or, if they don't like Star Wars.
It's an odd hill to die on.
It's an odd hill to die on for any movie or anything like that. Any kind of media. Like, I mean, Pulp Fiction especially, because that's like a very specific kind of movie. I feel like that's like a very... Well, I don't want to like generalize, but it feels like a very specific kind of like dude movie. But like, I don't know. Like,
I had tried reading Stephen King before and just like never really got into it. And I was always intimidated by the size of the books because many of them are quite thick.
His most famous and most popular books like It and The Stand are enormous. Yeah. But he's written a lot of perfectly like regularly length books.
But I just had never really... I don't know. Never really taken the plunge.
The thing that I think was smart that he did with the Dark Tower series is that when they published the last 3, like kind of in a row, which he wrote like on a tear after he recovered from his like horrific, almost life-ending injury, was he went back and wrote forwards to all of the original books where he talked about where he was in life when he wrote the first book, because he wrote it when he was like 20. Yeah. And I'm so glad you let her in here.
Go.
Anyway, I thought it was pretty smart that he did that because, like, I don't know, going back, if you're working on a series of books over the course of like 30 years of your life, it's pretty awesome to go back and reevaluate where you were in your head when you wrote some of them and sort of communicate that to the reader. Like, that was really smart of him to just sort of put his, like, start off each book with like, hi, this is, your Uncle Stevie or whatever he calls himself. And he's like, this is, just my 2 cents on like the book you're about to read, which was really, I thought that was really smart. He's always been kind of like transparent about his thought process and reading and things like that. I think that's one of the reasons he's like as insanely famous as he is because he's kind of, he's the master of horror, but he's also just kind of like such a relatable dad type figure. He's very like, I don't know, 50s dad like that. But anyway, I'm very much looking forward to you reading the last Dark Tower book. And
I know, I need to.
We can do like maybe like a multi-episode like tear on like all the books or something.
I feel like once I finish that series, I'm gonna be a little bit of a wreck. Once I read the last one.
I remember you were reading Wizard and Glass
and just weeping at the dining room table.
I heard you reading it because I could hear you crying, and I was like, oh, she's at a certain part in that book. That's my favorite book in the series because it's like the most standalone story, and it's also just like incredibly well written. It's fantastic. It's like and it's also it's like a Western romance novel, so it's very much like, I don't know, it feels universal in that way, like. It's a very Shakespearean tragic romance sort of thing. Yeah. Set in like a facsimile of the American West.
Shall we wrap up?
I guess.
For the evening.
Now that we're done talking about Freaked, which we both enjoyed.
About a lot of things on today's podcast.
Yeah, we were a little pent up because we haven't recorded in a while.
I know.
But I'm also like always
need to record more. I never know like what the central topic should be.
Well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we talked about Freaked for maybe half an hour, and then we've stretched it out to twice that length because you and I can just go if we want to on whatever, and hopefully people like listening to it. I'm hoping. But yeah, we can wrap this up. We'll figure out what we're going to do on the next episode, and I think I'm done for now trying to tool around with new recording. I think this will work just fine. New recording configurations, and we'll just go with this one for a while so we can actually get back to recording on a regular basis. So if you have anything that you want to tell us about, maybe something to review or just talk some like a topic for us to talk about, I can't make words no goods
or
anymore.
If you have any questions, comments, or concerns.
That's right. We are on Twitter at unhippod, and we are also at Gmail. Fuck. God damn it.
Cut.
We also do Gmail for the web internet.
I like a cha-cha.
I like a cha-cha. Joined at the unhip at gmail.com if you have any, like Yana said, questions, comments, concerns. And we will see you guys much sooner than we did this last time.
Bye-bye.